I do not want to be your punching bag, 'cause I'm done with that. I will not let myself be a doormat, 'cause I don't wanna be walked on. What will you do when I am nowhere to be found? What will you do when I'm not around? It seems like every day it's something else. Sometimes you'll have to do things by yourself, 'cause I can't do it all for you. What will you do when I am nowhere to be found? What will you do when I'm not around? Will you go find someone else when you need some help? Will you tell them that they're doing it wrong? Well, I guess that's how it is. I do not want to be your punching bag, 'cause I'm done with that. I will not let myself be a doormat, 'cause I don't wanna be walked on. What will you do when I am nowhere to be found? What will you do when I'm not around?
Warning: this podcast features adult subject matter, adult language, and things not meant for children to hear. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been warned. If it's the Saturday before a pay-per-view, you're tuned into the pregame. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of appropriate ages, to the only pre-pay-per-view show you need to tune into, the pregame. And what would a pregame be without a little pregame? Nothing, that's what. So, let's kick things off properly with a little pregame. You ready over there, brother?
Yep.
Cheers.
bro.
That is how you pregame, goddammit.
There we
So,
go.
first and foremost, how you doing over there, brother?
I'm doing good. About yourself?
I'm here and I'm ready for more fights. Excuse me. So, that being said, today is June 7th, and we are gearing up for UFC 316 going down this afternoon from the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, with a pair of bantamweight title fights on the top of the card. But before we talk about either one of those fucking fights, I want to take just a minute here and give folks a little bit of a heads up on a couple fights that, in my opinion, are just going completely under the fucking radar. I'm not promising you these are going to be the best fights in the world. What I'm telling you is nobody really knows about either one of these goddamn fights, but everybody is pretending that they do. The first one is literally the fucking curtain jerker. The fight that is going to start this entire card off is just an all kinds of clusterfuck here. So, excuse me. Markel Medeiros was originally scheduled to fight Balaji Oki last weekend. There were issues. He had to pull out. So last weekend we saw Balaji Oki fight Michael Aswell.
Right.
Wonderful fucking fight. Spectacular. Aswell made a fucking great representation of himself. He didn't get the W, but he definitely showed that he is UFC capable. And I think Aswell's going to have a pretty good future here. What they did instead was they moved Medeiros back to this week. And since Balaji Oki fought Michael Aswell in Aswell's debut last weekend, this weekend, Medeiros is going to be taking on a gentleman by the name of Mark Chowinski, making his UFC debut. Now, Chowinski is 8-0. Let me double check, see where they pulled him from, because he literally accepted this fight on, I believe, 7 days' notice. It's either 6 or 7 days' notice. That's what I thought. He is a former LFA fighter as well. So, yeah. 7-0, 6-0 in. No. I read that wrong. I apologize. He is 4-0 under Anthony Pettis's FC. Anthony Pettis FC. Pettis has his own fight organization. So does Uriah Faber. There's a couple of those guys that do out there. He is, let's see, 4-0 under the Pettis. No, 5-0. Excuse me, 5-0 under the Pettis tutelage. Won the Kangoo Fight Night. I'm not sure what the fuck that is. And then one LFA fight, which he also won as well. So Chowinski's coming in here on a fucking run, like with 3 different organizations and still undefeated, now getting a short notice call up to the UFC. Pretty much everybody we've seen get short notice debuts, at least in the last month or so, has made pretty fucking good examples of themselves. We haven't had anybody really in the last, I'd say, at least 2 or 3 months that has gotten their debut on short notice and then just gotten their ass kicked. And it was very clear that they should not have been going to the UFC at any point in time, let alone on short notice. This does not seem like one of those things. This gentleman has finishes by submission. He's got finishes by strikes, TKO, KO. He's got a decision in there as well. So this gentleman has gone to a full fight. He has stopped guys via sub on the ground. He stopped guys with his hands on the feet. He seems pretty fucking well-rounded. Medeiros isn't that much of a UFC veteran himself. I believe, let me check. I think he's on his 3rd UFC fight now. Let's see. Yeah. So 4th technically because he had a Contender Series fight. So he won his Contender Series fight. He won his first round, or excuse me, his first UFC fight by decision, won his 2nd fight by decision. This will be his 3rd fight in the actual UFC. So finished to get him finished to get him into the UFC off the Contender Series, but then 2 decisions again, back to back, against 2 tough guys, especially for a new guy to be making their debut against. Now it turns around and he is that guy who they're going to be throwing someone making their debut up against. So 3 fights in and he's taking the place of the guy that he had to fight to make his name something in the UFC. I love those little fucking ironies like that. Like, there's no guarantee it's going to be the greatest fight in the world, but Medeiros had an extra week off compared to when he was originally scheduled. So regardless of what he had going on last week, he got cleared last week to fight this week. So he's had a full week to get ready. Chowinski's known about this for a week, but like I said, he is undefeated, so he's one of those guys that seems to stay ready. Could be an interesting way.
Is he in any type of camp or anything for anything at all?
We haven't really gotten a whole lot of anything information-wise. Like, they haven't done any interviews with him because he's getting rushed through because, you know, you make your debut in the UFC, you've got to do all the media bullshit. You've got to get all your initial photos and your paperwork and all your medical work done. Like, it's a whirlwind for sure. So he hasn't really done any interviews to really talk much about what's been going on. Just the couple that I've seen is him saying that, you know, he's ready for whatever Medeiros is going to bring. He can hang on the feet. He can hang on the ground. He can go, you know, the full 15 if he needs to. So I don't think it's going to be the best fight in the world. I'm not saying this is going to be better than the main event, but I'm saying for a fight that's going to open the pay-per-view or the pay-per-view card as a whole, it'll be on the early prelims, but they could have stacked it a hell of a lot worse.
Okay. I'm not mad at it. The only thing that worries me is that not only in the UFC, but other fighting organizations that you and I have watched I would say the fights that I've seen, a good 7 times out of 10, it doesn't turn out good for the short notice guy.
Generally not. No. We haven't really had a whole lot of fights, at least this year so far, where the short notice guy comes in and takes the W. Pretty much everyone that we've seen, I think, so far, the short notice dude comes in against a dude who was clearly more ready than he was, maybe not better, but
Right.
more ready than he was. And they generally, I think all of them so far this year have gone to decision with the new guy making a decent showing of himself, just, being a short notice situation, not having as much
He's in
prep as their
better
opponent.
shape, you know.
Yeah,
He's in better shape, or the guy's only got a week to get fight ready.
right. Yeah, if he was like, we've seen guys like Dan Ige who are literally in the fucking massage parlor getting his back worked on, gets a call from Sean Shelby, drives across Las Vegas and makes his fucking way in. Not everybody can fucking do that. Like, there are
Right.
legitimately more than not fighters who need at least a couple of weeks, generally speaking, to get from, just fucking around to quote unquote fight ready. We'll find out if Chowinski was really ready or if this is going to be another one of those, hat tip for fucking taking a short notice fight, but he's probably going to catch an L come this afternoon. We'll see.
Yep. It'd be
Um,
interesting.
let's see. Next one going down, I want to mention here real quick. Jusang Yu versus Jeka Saragi. Jeka Saragi, I believe, is the second ever fighter from India in the UFC and came in with an incredible amount of fucking hype. Obviously, fighters from India making it to this level are fairly rare. So when he got here, he had a whole fucking huge ticker tape parade, fucking hype train rolling down the street with him. And he's caught 2 L's in a row. And that's not a good thing in the UFC. I don't care where you're from, I don't care what your name is. You make your debut and lose your first 3 fights in a row, you generally don't get a fourth chance.
So this
We
is a
don't
win or
know.
loss.
Yeah, we don't know a whole lot about Ju Sang Yu, but what we do know is that he was one of the first fighters drafted by the Korean Zombie for the ZFN fight organization that the Zombie runs over in South Korea right now, and he's 2
Right.
and 0 over there. And Korean Zombie speaks very, very highly of this gentleman, and that doesn't happen a whole lot. Chang Sung Jung is not the type to just freely give out compliments to everyone. He's one of those dudes where if he's singing your praises, he's seen you're capable of shit. So
I was gonna say, as far as I know, he wasn't a guy that talks much to begin with.
yeah,
So if
he
he's
he
saying
generally
something,
doesn't
he can
chat.
probably.
Yeah, he don't bump his gums much. So when he's one of those strong silent types, so when he speaks, it's generally very important. And he's singing Ju Sang Yu's praises every time they give him an opportunity to. So as much as I love the idea of Jekka, being the first one I think to make it this far into the UFC, I think we've had an Indian fighter on the Contender Series before him, but I believe he's the first one to actually get into the UFC. As much as I love that representation and I love to see people from all fucking regions getting their shot on the highest level, realistically, sometimes just because you're the only one from a region doesn't mean that you're UFC level. And, not to be a UFC shill, but at this point, we're talking about the top of the top. Like, you might have been great in India, but there are a lot of fighters who are great in India. When leave your small pond, you find out how big of a fish you really are. And unfortunately, it seems like Jekka turned into a minnow when he got to the UFC. We might see, a whole different ball game this afternoon when he steps in the cage, and I kind of hope that we do because I don't want to see him, one and done, show up, get your fucking papers, get your ass kicked, and then get sent home. But if it does happen that way, Jusang Yu is not just a can that they're giving Jekka a last chance resort, fight against. Like, he's a legitimate fucking prospect with, bona fide credentials behind him and verified pros who know what the fuck they're talking about saying how good he is. Could be interesting. This could be like a very melancholy situation where on one hand we might be losing the first Indian fighter to make it to this level in the UFC, but on the other hand, we might be losing him at the hands of one of Korean Zombies fight organization's first real get out and do something and show them what we are capable of back here kind of fighters as well. So
Right. So it could be.
yeah.
So what does that say for Korean Zombies fighter if he loses.
At this point, it would be very similar to the first fight that we talked about here. It would just be really a matter of the fact that even in losing, Jekka has still had 2 fights in the UFC before. So he's been under those spotlights and the pressure before and had at least 2 fights to try to acclimate to it. And now, like Roderos, he's on the other side of that. He's the guy who's had a couple fights in the UFC, and this gentleman is going to be making his debut, or I think he's making his official UFC debut full time against Jekka here. So it's one of those situations where, like, if he wins, he's representing where he came from. If he loses, it's most likely because he didn't have enough prep time, especially compared to Jekka here. Next fight down the card from that, we have to talk about this fight, if no other reason than to show why this type of thing is so fucking important. Ariane Lipski da Silva versus Song Wang. Song Wang showed up yesterday, made weight like she does every time, no issues. Ariane Lipski da Silva showed up and weighed 7 pounds over. She weighed in at 132.3 pounds. Didn't even try to go recut, just stood there on the scale, got her pictures taken, and then left. We found out later in the afternoon yesterday that she had a pituitary gland tumor during this camp. They had it tested and it came back benign, but because of the stress from finding the pituitary tumor, they went with a new nutritionist to try and help the weight cut. We scream about it all the time on the show. It doesn't matter if you're making a short notice debut or you've been in the UFC for 35 fights. If you are on the UFC roster, period, end of sentence, you can go to the UFC PI where they have licensed nutritionalists who will not only work with you and your weight cut to develop the safest and healthiest way for you to get there, they will line out your nutrition, they will line out your vitamins, and you will get all of your meals prepped to those specifics and all of your minerals and vitamins and supplements tailored to that plan specifically for free. Any fighter on the UFC roster gets all of this for free from the Performance Institute by some of the best in the world in those fields.
So why do you think? I've heard you say this before, and I've always wanted to ask: A, are there any current and or former champions that used this program that only
Almost
use
all
the
of them.
UFC?
Almost all of them. There are a couple of fighters. O'Malley still has his own personal chef, which, but Juliana uses the PI. I believe Kayla's using the PI. Marab uses the PI. Yeah, the vast majority of the fighters, because they've partnered with Thorne Supplements and then Mike Dolce and the Dolce Diet, and they have some of the best accredited nutritionists and food scientists in the world in the UFC PI, as well as supplement specialists and the Thorne distribution. So they will literally give you all of your food and all of your fucking supplements guaranteed to never pop dirty in a drug test, because these are the only approved supplements by the UFC. So you can literally get everything from them down to the meal plan itself and the meals for a proper weight cut, no matter your weight cut.
So
why the fuck would you use anyone else?
that, and if it's that big of an issue, because I've heard, it ranges from week to week. Somebody gets dirty for this, or somebody can't make weight for that, or blah 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 blah. So why doesn't the UFC just make it mandatory? If you were part of the UFC roster, you have to use our nutritionists.
Because that would mean that they were UFC employees and not independent contractors, the way that the contracts are written up. And Dana would then have to provide them with full health insurance, sick leave, maternity leave, retirement, pensions, the whole kit and caboodle. That's part of what the class action lawsuits that are going on right now are trying to fucking get. That's one of the reasons that I harp on the class action lawsuit shit so fucking much, is because especially the one that Phil Davis just launched this week, he's asking for zero financial compensation. They don't want money. They just want the court to break the way that the UFC writes contracts and break any existing contracts and force them to make real, admirable contracts for both the fighter and the UFC instead of locking fighters down like they have been for 30 fucking years now.
How big is the UFC roster? Do you know? Do you have
I
like
think
a ballpark number?
I think the last time somebody asked Dana for the total number, he said they were sitting around 11 to 1200 people total with all the weight classes with men and women.
Okay, so you've got that. How much is the UFC worth?
Last valuation I believe they got was 5.8 billion with a B.
Okay, you could take 1 billion alone, and set these people up with health care for basically
Life.
the rest of their life.
Yep.
It doesn't
That
matter. I don't care what sport it is, from rugby to the NFL to hockey to even baseball. If you are taking significant strikes to the head, just the head regardless,
yep.
CTE is a thing.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Proven.
Not being able to sign your name without scribbling is a thing. There
Yep.
are retired NFL players who can't eat on their own.
Yep.
There's retired rugby players that can't walk, but they have health care. I mean, granted, they had to do the same thing that the UFC is doing and sue their organizations, but
The big difference though, in all the major sports, in order to shut the organization on the other end down and make it to where they could get fair compensation and healthcare and retirement options and shit, they all formed a fucking union.
ba-ba-da-ba.
Every time that's been tried in MMA, it's been tried by someone who shouldn't be leading a union and involved people who shouldn't be involved in a union, let alone the fact that it was for MMA. It has been tried 3 times on a big scale now. All 3 times it's fallen flat on its fucking face because people who shouldn't be doing it, people who shouldn't be running that type of a situation, are involved in it because of who they are.
So this is, I automatically think if every fighter on the roster that is signed to a contract refused to fight, they'd be fucked.
Yes. Yes. The current
But
UFC situation is very much like the current US employment situation as a whole. The bigwigs at the top are just now starting to realize that there are so many more peons than there are people at the top, and that if they organize together, the whole pyramid flips upside down.
yeah, if you stop all at once, and that's the thing, you have to convince everybody to stop
That's been the problem pretty much
because
every time, because you'll always get, every
every
time a fighters union for MMA has come up, like Anderson Silva has been chomping at the bit, screaming every time anyone has put one together. And that's the type of name you want attached to a fighters union. That's a dude who's been there, done that, seen it, got the fucking t-shirt, and came back for the ceremonial mug. Like, that's a dude you want involved in shit like that. And then you get guys like fucking Red Rebney, like, or Bjorn Rebney, excuse me. Just scumbags in the fight world, no fucking respect from anyone really, other than some fighters, because he was trying to help organize the union. And then it failed.
now, how are the refs with? Are they in the same type of boat, or are they considered employees?
No, the referees are assigned through athletic commissions. So they have no, that's one of the things that Dana White bitches about a lot, is that when we have a fight night where a ref makes a clear bad call, generally speaking, nothing is done about that until the next day when the athletic commission can meet, with the exception of the last couple times we saw a big one happen. Where the fuck were they? They were overseas. I don't remember if it was London. I think there was a ref make a bad call, and then after that fight was over, the athletic commission stepped in and pulled that referee from the rest of the fights that he would have been working that night and immediately put an investigation into the fight. But they generally don't do anything like that here in the States, regardless of which state they're actually in where the fights are taking place.
Okay. Because I didn't know if it would be like a,
That's an athletic commission issue.
because I could see, I don't know, if they were a part of it, put a Herb Dean and a fucking Aspinall and then Silva at the forefront. Two people that can talk and somebody that can.
Speak to
Sure.
the rules, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's one of the arguments that is persisted. Basically, I think it was either the second or third episode of this show that TJ and I did back in like 2019. We were talking about one of the first class action lawsuits that got brought up and filed to try and do this exact same fucking thing. So it's been a thing for almost a decade now, where fighters who have been fucked by the UFC are trying to get some type of resolution that benefits everyone, not just themselves. Nobody that has filed these class action lawsuits is in it for themselves. Like I said, Phil Davis isn't even asking for fucking money. Like, there are fighters who are trying to get this right for other fighters, but it's a David versus Goliath situation, man. And Goliath has just been smacking these little fucking flies around for years now. So
Just like going against the government or, the tobacco industry,
yep,
anything. I mean,
it's the
you've
uphill
got
battle
deep
of
in his
uphill
pockets.
battles.
Yes. You've got deep enough pockets.
Yep. Okay, so a couple more fights I want to hit on real quick here before we get out of here, because the fights are going to start in about 20 minutes or so.
Okay.
There's another one that we talked about on the show a little bit. I'm not saying this to say that it's going to be a great fight, but I'm telling you, it's one of the ones that has potential to be fun. Bruno Silva versus Joshua Van. 135-pound dudes, or are they 25ers? Let me double check them. No, they are 25ers. I apologize. Flyweights. Joshua Van is one of the best boxers the UFC has signed in a long time, regardless of weight class. And he has proven that he has genuine knockout power in his hands at 125 pounds. That is almost unheard of. Bruno Silva, on the other side, is very similar, but older and has more miles on him at this point. He's been through the grinder a little bit longer. And I'm not going to say he's on the other side of it, but he's looking at the peak career wise. He's right around that point where he's about as good as he's going to be able to get in the time he's going to have as a fighter. Joshua Van is 23. The kid is just literally starting. And in the fights that we have seen him in already, there is measurable, visible proof in watching him evolve and start to learn and put pieces together and round off those fucking rough edges that new fighters have. This very well could be a 45-second fucking bing bing knockout. Holy shit, everyone's screaming, running around the room. This could be 15 minutes of oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, back and forth fucking slobber knockers of tiny dudes.
That would be, yeah. That'd be awesome.
This fight has potential to go either fucking way. This could be a quick knockout from either one of them, because Silva has fucking hands too, but he's also got a pretty decent chin. He's been touched, but he's got a decent chin. Van has not been stopped. He's been beaten, but he has not been stopped. And it only made him angrier and made him train harder. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. That one could be very fucking fun. We're all kind of stoked watching for that one. The other one's the one right after that, the quote unquote premier prelim fight, the last premier fight, or the last prelim fight rather, before they get into the actual pay-per-view part of the card. Vicente Luque versus Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland is probably the single most active fighter in the UFC, regardless of fucking weight class. The dude literally fights like every 2 to 3 months and has for a couple of years now, and talks about how he understands that he's not going to be able to do this forever, but he's making real good money and he's physically able to do it now. So why the fuck not? He loves fighting. He's getting right back in there again. Vicente Luque, on the other side, has been around since, I want to say, Ultimate Fighter 6 or 7. He has been around the UFC since the Black Zillions were still a thing. And that hasn't been a thing in over a decade now at this point. But he had a very serious health scare and literally almost died either beginning of last year or the end of the year prior, end of 2 years ago. And had to take essentially a full year off before he could even get back medically cleared to train again. Seems like he's capable, but as with anybody who goes through that situation, he's not the same fighter that he used to be. And in order to stay at the top fighting guys like Kevin Holland, who I believe is ranked number 6 or 5, like he's in the fucking top 10 for good goddamn reason. In order to be able to hang with guys like that, you have to be able to stay with it. And at this point in time, between the road miles of having been around for so fucking long, combined with the fact that you had a health scare just a little over a year ago that literally almost fucking killed you, it all starts to kind of add up. Kevin Holland is also starting to get to that point where he's been in so fucking many fights. If he can't like bring that spring chicken back into it, he's going to be starting to crest that peak and starting to look at the downward slide of his career as well. So they're both kind of in very similar situations for different reasons. But this is, again, two dudes who, if they can either one find that older version of themselves and pull out just a little bit of it, this could be a fucking spectacular fight as well, because both of them have great fucking hands. Both of them have great wrestling. Both of them have great jujitsu. This fight could go and be exciting anywhere as well. So,
Okay.
not a bad fight to put just before the pay-per-view starts to get everybody excited for the pay-per-view itself.
Right.
The pay-per-view portion doesn't really need, or in my opinion, really deserve that much more hype. This is absolutely one of those cards. If you want to watch these fights, go to Buffalo Wild Wings, give them the $10 and eat all the fucking wings you can handle or whatever. Don't pay $90 for this fucking card if you don't have to. This is not one that has been stacked good enough that it's going to be worth you giving $100 fucking dollars to the UFC to watch, because there's only 4 fights on the fucking main card at this point. And while they're interesting, none of them are that great. The opening fight on the card is going to be, in my opinion, the best one. Patchy Mix versus Mario Batista. We talked about it a little bit on the show. Mario Batista is not a world breaker, and he never fucking will be. But what he is very capable. He has good fight IQ, and he basically negated Jose Aldo's entire fucking game plan for 15 minutes. It wasn't exciting. He didn't outstrike Jose. He didn't out-wrestle Jose. He pinned him against the fucking cage and didn't let him move, and Jose could not get out of it. I get that that's frustrating, but that's also a fucking game plan against a dude who's very dangerous that he executed and shut down a legend. Batista has said he's not here to be exciting, and it's not his problem if the guys that he fight can't get him off them while he holds them to the cage. That's part of fighting. That's your fault. That's your job to figure out how to stop him from doing that. If he can do that and hold you there for 15 minutes and win a fight, he's going to, and he's demonstrated that. So Patchy Mix is one of the best in the world at 135 pounds. Point blank, period. I will fucking wave that flag till he fucking proves me wrong. I've been watching Patchy Mix for a long time. There's a reason he held belts in fucking Bellator and PFL. Patchy Mix is damn good. He is very well-rounded. He is very competent everywhere the fight can go. He has subs and knockouts on his record scattered all over the fucking place. So he can finish the fight anywhere that it goes. He also has plenty of 5-round experience. So he can take this fight the whole 15 minutes if he needs to and go anywhere with it. I think at this point, Patchy Mix is a little more capable and a little more spry, a little younger in the game than Jose Aldo was when Batista held him to the fence. And I think it's going to be a very different fight than we have seen from Batista his last couple times out. Patchy Mix is here to make a point in his debut on the pay-per-view portion of the first pay-per-view card since he got signed to the UFC. That's a big fucking deal. He also understands how big of a deal it is because he's been a champion in multiple organizations before. So he's used to and is trying to get right to champion level here in the UFC. Mario Batista knows that and has said flat out, if you can't stop me from holding you against the cage, it doesn't matter what your intentions are.
Yep.
I don't know that it's going to be the most exciting if Batista gets his way, but it could be very interesting to see a dude as good and as young as Patchy Mix get fucking held against the cage like several other good fighters have in Batista's career. It ain't going to get him to a title, but it could be interesting to see if he can stop this fucking Patchy Mix train rolling in.
That's fair.
I almost don't even want to talk about this next fucking fight because I don't fucking like it, but it's going to be a thing, so it needs to be mentioned. Joe Pyfer versus Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum at one point was a motherfucker, and I don't say that lightly. Kelvin Gastelum was a motherfucker. And then he fought Israel Adesanya in what is now a Hall of Fame 5-round fucking car crash of a fight. Israel Adesanya has been very open about the fact that that fight changed him, not just as a fighter, but as a man, because that was a 5-round bloody war. Both of them came out physically altered. They went to fucking battle for 25 minutes. The problem is Izzy used that fight as motivation and as fire to drive him and to make him better and to make him train harder and train more to round off any fucking sharp corners he had as a fighter. And it kind of broke Kelvin Gastelum mentally. He has not been the same fighter in the last 6 years, 5 years since that fight happened. He has gone up and down in weight class. He has changed complete training camps 3 different times. He has fired all of his coaches, and now his girlfriend is his main coach and his nutritionist, which is always ill-advised. I don't care who your significant other is. That is always an ill-advised move. The problem is that Joe Pyfer is a dude that came into the UFC with more hype around his life story than his actual fighting ability. And the last time we saw Joe Pyfer, he was the only fucking fighter out of, I believe, 37 who were there in Mexico to quote unquote get sick from food from the same restaurant that every other UFC fighter who was there ate at. Joe Pyfer was defeated by a tummy ache in Mexico. He didn't even make the fucking walk. There's a lot to be questioned about not just Joe Pyfer's abilities, but about his real mental state in terms of the fighting game. Like, I get that he probably didn't feel great, probably ate something that he maybe not should have before a fucking professional fight. But to somehow be the one person out of literally hundreds between the fighters and the coaches and the staff and everyone else that was there with the UFC to eat at this one particular place, you're the only one to get sick from it.
Sounds a little suspect to me.
Skeptical eyes make skeptical glances is what I'll say. So yeah, Kelvin Gastelum, I never had a problem with Kelvin Gastelum. I was never the biggest fan, but I never had any issue with him. He's always been a pretty straight up dude. He's been a fucking honest fighter. Win or loss, he takes it like a fucking man and moves forward. Doesn't ever fucking make excuses. Doesn't try to play the bullshit game. Doesn't have that feel sorry for me fucking pity party. Owns his wins as well as he does his fucking losses with his fucking head held high. And I can respect that. But ever since that Izzy fight, he has genuinely been a shell of his former self. And his former self was good enough to get to the top of the peak. But if you can't get past where you've shown you have issues, you're never going to make it. Bouncing weight classes, bouncing camps, bouncing coaches, like none of that is good. And he's been around long enough to know that. So this fight largely will depend on which version of Kelvin Gastelum shows up, because we've seen everything Joe Piper has to offer, both in the cage and out at this point. This fight's going to be determined by which version of Kelvin Gastelum steps into the cage this evening.
We shall see.
Co-main event, Juliana Pena versus Kayla Harrison. We harped on it on the show. I'm not going to go off on it too much. This fight shouldn't fucking be happening. Juliana Pena did not beat Raquel Pennington. Period. Point blank. End of conversation. I'll die on that fucking hill. I don't care. She did not beat Raquel Pennington. Like Christian said, this ass whooping that Kayla's about to try to deliver belongs to Raquel Pennington. Juliana Pena should not be here. She basically squirmed her way with a lucky fucking gifted decision into a fight she has no business in. The problem is that Kayla Harrison is a former Olympian who used to compete at 178 pounds. She fought when she crossed over to MMA at 155 pounds. The lowest she had ever fought prior to getting signed to the UFC 3 fights ago was 145 pounds. Her 2 fights in the UFC were 135 pounds, but they were not title fights. So she was allowed to weigh in at 136 both times. Yesterday was the first time in her entire career, both UFC and otherwise, she has ever stepped on a scale and made 135 pounds with a 0 behind it. There's a reason every sports outlet in the fucking world has run some variation of the same article today about the unrecognizable difference between Kayla Harrison at Media Day on Wednesday, flexing and showing off for the cameras, and the skeleton in a fucking bikini standing on the scale yesterday when she made weight. She was fully fucking sucked in and looked gaunt and weak. And we've talked about it time and time again. I don't care who you are. I don't care how good you are. When you cut weight too fucking hard, your performance will be reflected. Kayla's not a 5-round title fight kind of gal to begin with. Then you add in a cut that was literally so hard, you could see the bones of her skull as she stood on the fucking scale. You can only rehydrate so much without an IV in 24 hours, and they don't get to use IVs. That's going to affect power. That's going to affect gas tank. That's going to affect fight IQ and in-fight decision-making. I said it on the show. I'll say it here. Pena is not good. But what she is durable. Amanda Nunes beat the fucking brakes off of her 50-45 for 25 solid minutes and did not fold. Raquel Pennington beat the fucking brakes off of her for a solid 25 minutes and she did not fold. Juliana Pena is not good, but she is a tough bitch. She will be able to take, in my opinion, anything Kayla will be able to throw at her. And then she's going to ground Kayla out and she's going to ride her like a fucking backpack. And when you're having a bad weight cut, being forced to wrestle is going to drain any energy you have that fucking quick. When you have a bad weight cut, it's going to be even worse. This is essentially a run back of what happened when Juliana faced Amanda the first time. Amanda was compromised because she had the Rona and had not fully recovered from it. She herself said it, but she wasn't going to give up the challenge to Juliana Pena. And it showed in that fight in round 3. Amanda's gas tank started wearing the fuck out because she couldn't physically breathe enough to train for a proper 5-round fight. And Juliana took over. I anticipate this being a very similar version of that fight. I think Kayla's going to come out. She's going to be very dangerous early on, but just like a Ferrari, once that red line hits and then the gas tank starts to go down, the car's going to slow down. And when that car slows down, Juliana Pena will grab the fuck onto her and hold her for the whole fucking fight, because she doesn't have to finish her. She just has to stop Kayla from doing anything, and she will retain her belt.
So she'll get one title defense by fluke.
Basically. And then the main event is a rematch of a fight that we didn't need to fucking see. Merab Dvalishvili beat Sean O'Malley pillar to fucking post so bad that he literally set a UFC record for number of takedowns in a title fight. And then, just for icing on the cake, because he's Merab, held that motherfucker down and kissed him on his back to show how little Sean O'Malley could do to stop him. Yeah, Sean landed a couple good shots in the end of round 5. Way too little, way too fucking late. There has been nothing. Yeah, there has been nothing to show that he has done anything, despite all of his talks, to change up what happened the first time. And I genuinely expect lather, rinse, repeat, an exact same, maybe not strike for strike, but same style fight, same fucking result. Sean's going to try and get showy. He's going to try and knock Merab out because he's always fucking convinced he's got these hands. And Merab is just going to ragdoll him, throw him the fuck around, and do whatever the hell he wants for 25 more minutes and keep his fucking belt.
I don't. I'm still gonna go play the devil's advocate and take Sean, but
Right.
it's just because why not? And I didn't mind him as a fighter before. I genuinely liked some of his highlights, and I have seen some of his lowlights and where he's fucked up, but if he ever pull his head out of his ass, he could be a people's champion.
There's potential. That's what I said. I'm very rarely, and you've seen it, I am very rarely mad at being wrong about calls like this. I am 99.99% of the time, I'm more than happy to be proven wrong in what I think is going to happen like this. But this is also one of those sets of circumstances. I'm pretty fucking confident that I've made it informed enough decisions and guesses about what we're looking at here. I don't anticipate being surprised by much this afternoon.
That's fair. Hey, we will see.
But that is UFC 316 in a nutshell. Fights are going to kick off in a little less than 10 minutes here. You got anything else you want to say to the people before we let them run?
No, sir.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this has been the pregame for UFC 316. If you like what we get up to around here, please make sure you are subscribed and your notifications are turned on so you find out before we do this. Every pay-per-view there is Saturdays. We will be here an hour before those pay-per-views starts for your entertainment pleasure. If you like us, give us a thumbs up, helps out. Make sure you subscribe if you like it. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. We don't give a shit. Go fuck yourself. That's all we've got for this one. Have a good one, everybody. We're out.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kicks were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening.